Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Minahan and her panel of guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for soul growth. Come journey with us through astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello again. This is Sue Minahan, and I'm with Talk Cosmos today on November 17th. We are in the middle of enormous transmutations, yes, of our soul, of our heart, of our destiny. There's pros and cons on any which side, and it is a time ultimately always of unity. How do we get there? Well, like a homeopathic doctor, it is taking the poison of a little and using that, the venom, just like they did with the snake, and healing. It's the truth of many things. You have to, yin and yang, right? Taoism. So we are on a path, and it's a journey, and we're in it together, whether we see that or not. And somehow, if we can look at that coin with two sides as it rolls and spins, that we shadow each side and we embrace each side. But looking at the small portion of anything to get to the big part, it is a matter of really touching those people that you do have a commonality with, that your heart will sing with. And I hope through this, we have 5 of us here, and we'll see how it goes. And of course, we're all going through those wounds, and we're still in the midst of it. We're hardly the end. There's going to be one more direct hit to it'll be a direct transit February 18th. But this is the second one. It's already happened. We're in the midst of it. And my point that I was trying to make before I sort of elongated my thought was that by connecting with those close to us, we begin, we heal, we meet, we met, etc., and we can start our path. So with that said, we are ready now for U.S. global currents with our astrological viewpoint of US24 elections. Thank you.
Examining significant United States domestic politics and foreign affairs through the astrological perspective of the celestial map of the sky to understand the impact on each individual around the globe. This is your U.S. Global Currents panel.
I'm Sue Minahan, founder of Talk Cosmos since 2018. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, consultant, speaker, writer, vibrational astrology student, Dwarf Planet University graduate, Kepler Astrology Toastmasters Club charter member. I have a fine arts music degree plus a certificate in jazz. I'm an artist, musician, and certified color energy life coach. Especially, I love mythology and esoteric philosophies.
I'm Michael Bartlett, master metaphysical astrologer and the author of 2 books, Astrological Mavericks, You Have What It Takes to Change the World, and Astro Theater, a revolutionary look at the ancient art of astrology. Given my core energetic training, highly intuitive nature, 4 decades of business experience, over 2 decades of astrological wisdom, all give me an extensively resourced toolbox. I focus on esoteric and traditional astrology while incorporating the depths of the outer planets. I offer experiential intensives, mentoring, groups, readings, speaking engagements, and workshops. I was the past interim president of Kepler College and still do classes for them.
I'm Robert Passetti, professional consulting astrologer and the visionary behind Deep Earth Astrology and the Deep Earth Astrology Tarot, a divination tool and teaching aid that integrates astrology, herbalism, and natural reverence. I specialize in vibrational and psychological techniques and infuse my practice with a deep connection to nature's spirituality. I'm currently the Grand Pendragon in the Ancient Order of Druids in America and the director of the Magus Gathering in Gore, Virginia.
I'm Justin Crockedelzy, an archetypal Jyotish astrologer, yoga and meditation teacher, and author. I combine both Western ancient astrology and modern psychological astrology with Eastern Vedic astrology, and I specialize in predictive, electoral, and karmic astrology for individuals and couples. I also do in-depth astrological research into arcane astrological concepts, focusing on the mystical, occult side of astrology.
And I'm John Chenworth, a Seattle astrologer with more than 25 years' experience. I use a blend of evolutionary, traditional, and archetypal techniques and constantly attend workshops and lectures to further hone my skills. I hold an MFA in Poetics, an MA in Teaching, and an Astrological Diploma. I've lectured at NORWAC and served on the WSAA board. I have worked in general and special education classrooms, both as a teacher and mentor. I also enjoy reading, penning poems, riding a bike, and going on road trips around the great state of Washington.
Rock musician Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention says, "A mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it's not open." Hey, that always surprises me. It's like, oh yeah, we're falling. Yeah. Airbound. Well, hello, Justin and John, Rob, and Michael.
Hello. It's a good time for some Frank Zappa quotes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, let's get right. Yeah, happening now. Music is really the binder of well, it was our first lullaby, I think, the heart pumping, boom, 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 however it boomed in our womb, the boom in the womb. Okay, I'm poetic today. Let's get on with our slides. It's Chiron retrograde, the USA's second return, and reopens wounds. And this is an astrological perspective on the 24 U.S. elections, which is part of an ongoing panel team of U.S. global currents. And once we get through this section, we'll move on to other dynamics, but we're in the thick of it. The river's flowing. And here again, you have all the people. And I'm sorry, my slide is wonky, and I've got tips on how to improve it. But Michael Bartlett is Core Michael. Justin Crockett-Elsie is his name, JustinCrockettElsie.com. And John Chinwood, and he also has, you'll find out how others to get a hold of people. John is Sky Path Astro, and Rob Passetti is Deep Earth Astrology. I am Talk Cosmos. So hello, here is Chiron, the bridge. You know, it crosses Saturn and Uranus. And every time I realize that, my mind goes just like Zappa. Wow, wow, wow. And yeah.
Oh, it is kind of a renegade. Does its own thing, right? Chiron doesn't quite fit into the Greco-Roman pantheon because he's half human, half animal, which is interesting. So it's cool that it has that kind of an orbit, I think.
Yes, indeed. And Michael, you two were chiming.
Branching from the physical to the non-physical, the trans-Saturnian planet.
Yes.
The question I had is, you have second Chiron return, but as you're saying here, Chiron returns after 50 years, and our country is a little older than 100 years old.
Well, what
do you mean by that?
And thank you. This is an excellent question. Our first program was on April 21st, 2024, and then we morphed into this team panel, and that happened to coincide exactly with another major conjunction that was global, and that happened to be with Jupiter and Uranus at a conjunction. And it was just hours afterwards that the United States had our conjunction, which rather you could spell out in vibrational terms, big, sudden awareness of the moment. We might think a bit chaotic too, at least out of the norm. I mean, and that's not necessarily vibrational, but it is where the rhythm breaks, right? That's Uranus. It breaks it. But in the set of 50 and a half years, it always retrogrades and comes back. Some years it's 5 and some it's 3. In our April 21st program, people can go back to that. It's in the playlist. In fact, I think I'll add it to this particular playlist with U.S. global currents because it's so relevant. And it will show all those timelines. And they happen to be between 76, 78. And then again, it was in 1825 to 26. Then it flipped 50 years to 1874 to 75. And then into the 1900s, it went 1924 to 25, and then 73 to 75. And then now in 2024, and we'll just go to next year. So, long story short, I hope. He was a master healer. So there will be one more on February 18th, and we'll come up with that. Chiron, three things. He was an alchemist because he was a master healer teacher, taught Achilles, the greatest warrior, Hercules, the strongest person, not strongest person, but, and Asclepius for health, if I'm saying his name right.
I think he taught music to Orpheus.
Yes. Okay. So all the primal gods and people, but yet when he was wounded, he couldn't change, but he did. And that's where our story comes in with the mythology.
Also, that in addition to being an alchemist, he took alchemy into the area of being a master poison artist. And the fact is, it's his own poison that he was shot with.
I love you saying that, because I only drew the fact that he taught Hercules, and Hercules used a poison arrow to kill his second labor, as it's called, the Hydra. But I did think what goes around comes around. I didn't realize that he actually taught, of course, he taught war also to Achilles. So yes, it is absolutely the truth. I think that is the message.
Be careful what you do. I mean, it's almost like, the person who came up with TNT, right? Pulitzer. He had no idea that they were going to be using, Pulitzer's for peace. I always get the two mixed up.
That's right.
What's the one for the peace?
The Pulitzer Prize. Oh, Pulitzer Prize is for literary.
Yeah, but what's
and
the one
the other one? Yeah, folks.
We're all blanking today.
Yeah, we're blanking. It's the one that
the Nobel Prize.
Yes, the Nobel Prize. Right.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
It's in
Norway.
He
created that because he never expected that the TNT he had created would be used for people to rob banks and such. The real point was for it to be used for clearing the way for railroads. It seems always that whenever human beings come up with creating something, there's always a side effect. The guy who created Freon, for example, actually started doing our freezers. They started with Freon, and then he ended up finding, it does this really bad gas, and it takes out the, our ozone layers. So he does this other
hydrogen.
thing.
It grabs a hydrogen atom.
But each thing he does ends up having a ramification. There's just something almost like a Pandora's box with humanity's creations, which is an aspect of this Chironic.
Yeah, that's really true, especially with, it's right on the slide. I mean, he gave up his immortality in exchange for freeing Prometheus. Prometheus is a very Uranian figure. And, I think that Chiron often allows us to release into our own individuation. And we're really going to be seeing that theme a lot, as this cycle continues. Do you agree, Michael?
I 100%. I mean, when people keep asking me with what's going on after the election, and it gives me goosebumps, and I'm glad I'm starting to hear more and more people say it. I think it's just, it's diamond making time. The pressure and the things that are going to be going on are going to force all of our consciousness, all of our creativity to come forward and to help wake this world up.
The story is truly one of transmutation, that it is through that awareness of our grief and sorrow, of some pain that's incurable despite all odds, that is by transmuting from that so that we can use that to support others. And that's really my big message, is I think on any scale, just as we're talking in a compatible heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul essence, that you find that nucleus of people. It's a theme I keep coming up with that I find is a way through till the next passage, the next hour, the next day, the next year, whatever.
Something that a lot of people don't realize about his wound is that when he got shot with the arrow, it was not the first wound he had. And he actually had a wound with his parents. So there's something interesting when we look at Chiron. It's not all astrologers always talk about the wounded arrow, but he actually had a wound as in his youth with the parents, which also relates to the wound with relationships and the sense of himself. So that's really kind of important to think about, is that there's some familial and generational wounds that he was dealing with early on.
He was abandoned. He was rejected. Thank you, Justin. Absolutely. I'm going to write that.
And when you think about it, he was discovered in 1977. And what were we doing in the middle of the 70s? People were finally starting to deal with the fact that, hey, 1950s weren't all that great for a lot of people.
No. They were so restrictive. You look at the advertisements, having been born just prior, into that whole era. It's shocking. I can oh boy, shall I tell it? One of the big things that imprinted me was this lady on the TV wearing these yellow gloves up here with her little dress and, of course, an apron and all that, washing dishes and blah, blah. It's probably advertising Dove soap or whatever kind of soap. I don't know. And it was just like, I am never wearing those gloves. I don't care what happens. Anyway, that has a story, but let's go on to the next. It really, we don't just look at those ads. You'll go like, oh, my goodness. The roles so cut and dried. Liver represents grief is the other thing. And it is that interconnections. I think this just goes on to support what we're saying about the emotional ability to heal from them and sharing that wisdom. Any comments, or shall we move on? Silence is golden.
Really, I mean, in a sense, in the beginning, that his work started with being very much about poisons and harming people. And at the end, it was really literally his act of selflessness in order to take up Sisyphus's position. Prometheus's position, and to say, hey, I'll take it over. And that's when actually he was granted compassion as well and freedom to be released into the skies. So
instead of going to
instead
Hades.
of suffering the fate. Well, no, instead of suffering the fate of getting his liver ripped out for the rest of eternity. There's actually a redemption that happens in the story that is also, I think, very important. He's also he's really the only centaur that has a pedigree, so to speak. The rest of them are, they're basically ruffians. As
they were born
in the Harry Potter series.
And different.
Well, there is Pholus and Nessus, which are also kind of within that category of heads above. But it's interesting that you point out the aspect of sacrifice and compassion, because as we get into the slides in the second half of the show, we talk about the Sabian symbols for this particular Chiron. There is a theme of compassion that shows up here. And maybe somewhat of a clue to how we heal this re-traumatization of Chiron that we're going through.
Maybe so.
I'm trying to remember what you said there. Yes, and that's very strong. Michael, you just said something about, the
redemption.
Well, it wasn't just redemption. That's okay.
Compassion.
Okay. Yes. We'll leave it at that, I guess, because, yes, it is that forgiveness, isn't it? It's more than strong because of his birth wound, but okay, we'll go on. Thanks.
I mean, it's something I think, especially that's what's going on right now, as we're seeing around the world, this polarization between people that really actually share more in common than they don't, regardless of where it is that's happening around the world. And there has to be some sort of a learning and a compassion that each time, and I think this is way more of a scorpionic understanding, but every time I poke someone else's eye out, I poke out my own eye. And as one of the old sayings is, an eye for an eye leads the whole world blind. And some of the greatest gifts that I've heard over the years is when, and it even talks about it in the Course in Miracle, is when an ancient wound is healed through love and just says, hey, I will no longer carry this lineage, because we're talking about
that's it. Oh, thank you. Lineage. That's the word. Thank you. I was going to say that Ixion was the father of all the centaurs, but Chiron had a different lineage. So his actual lineage is totally different. It's from Saturn, who therefore turned into a mare, and then that rejection because of the fact that the Greeks and people were working to integrate the sense of instinctive nature with their higher wisdoms they were attaining. But the other centaurs that were really from Lawless, the brother of Pluto, Lawless, Ixion, the dwarf planet out there, were susceptible to intoxication and totally went off the rails, and that's what harmed. And so therefore there's, except for Pholus and Nexus,
that sounds like where we're at.
That's Pholus, and then it's Dionysus's wine jug, right?
Yeah.
Got into the wine.
Well,
Oh,
I
my
think wine
goodness.
can also be representative of misinformation and kind of where that other half has gone off the rails, right?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, right. The mass delusion, have the opiates for the masses, so to speak, right? Before opium was discovered in the West.
Yes.
Where it should be if Dionysus is the, with Bacchus and all that, the great mythology of of nature. And it really is a matter of integrating. We're still integrating these parts of ourselves. The Greeks divorced themselves from nature because there was such violence. So it's understandable, but we've got to elevate. There's still violence, right? But there is a point where I think there's a larger population that has higher consciousness. That's why connecting with our like-minded, because vibrations, they move.
But it also speaks to something in the chironic wound that is also typically very instinctual, right? And what happens when people do a lot of this stuff, it comes from the retribution or the pain that comes from it as an instinctual knee-jerk reaction, especially when we're talking about Aries, right? There's not really, Aries doesn't have a long fuse and say, hey, let's talk about it, right? It's like, this is where Chiron has a really interesting characteristic of just kind of like really literally charging in, right? Charging in where angels fear to tread, and what is here, what is going on, using their hoofs to dig up things and raising up to the sky and screaming from the pain that's going on the planet right now.
And it's been a year. We'll go to the next slide. This, folks, is from April.
Can I say something? I want to say something about collective grieving. So Chiron carries this thing about grieving, and we're going to, of course, the message is a collective grieving. So we're going to take that on. We have a lot to be sad about in our history, things that haven't been addressed, and yet it's going into Aries. And Michael, you're talking about now we're going to have to be jabbed by things. So it's just an interesting dynamic to me.
Yeah. So we'll go to the next slide. That is the United States actual returns. But here I want to bring a note that as of April 2nd this year until the 22nd of April next year, the entire world is going through this shadow time. And if anybody has it in their charts, it's from 19 degrees Aries until 23 degrees and a half, 32 Aries. And of course, you can do an orb within that. So just to let people know, and it will go direct just before New Year's on the 29th, because our focus is the United States. But meanwhile, we're dealing with a whole world that is going through the same drama as we're connoting here with the identity of am I, who, and how does that work? Here we are with the U.S. And if the one we're focusing on is November 8th, as of today, when it completed, and we'll see that it actually segued between late 7th to the 8th. And it's 10 months. It was since April 20th, and it finishes on February 18th. So looking at one focus is not so easy. Okay, I'll keep rolling here. We, on April 21st, we're addressing we the people. And thank you, dog. Yes, yes, yes. That really needed a good resounding omens, right? Because that was also the whole address for our supposed Pluto return. Although through the war, we have Pluto entering Aquarius. And Justin came up with these 3 categorized themes, and we'll get to some questions here, which I think we can address before we have about 5 minutes.
And if I could just say, these were the 3 themes, looking back over the history of the United States, these were the 3 consistent themes that happened every time the United States went through a Chiron return. So that's just what these 3 themes ultimately, and I think we've kind of met all 3 of these in this Chiron return, actually.
Yes, indeed. And I'm glad you're back with your puppy dog there, Michael. I love that dog. What's its name?
Lily.
Lily that's what my name, that's a rebirth plant. Me and Susan, actually. Ancient wise. Well, who belongs, and the culture, philosophy, and the presidential issues. Yes, sir, people, ma'ams, everybody. Let's if some, we can come back to it. But here, before we have this until we decide to part with our little 5 minutes, a few questions as to overall, either for the U.S., and we'll look at the charts in the next break, but going new directions, bridging common ground, new belief system, boundaries, what behaviors, and psychological. It's like, whoa.
I think this is really part of the massive readjustment that we're going to be having of the outer planets, and this is, this is really the first motion, and we've been experiencing it for a while now. But I mean, it's going to go direct on December 29th. Then we have, Pluto changing signs moving into Aquarius for the last time, January 20th, I believe. Okay, and then we have both Uranus and Neptune changing signs, and we're changing from very feminine signs to very masculine signs. It's a much more aggressive construct in the outer planets. And if you're going to start with an Aries return in Chiron, I mean, I think that's pretty much going to set the tone. And we just, our boundaries adjusting. I don't know if adjusting is the right word. Are boundaries going to be slashed down is really the question I would want to ask.
Touché. Or going through rapid therapeutic change. Maybe that's what Chiron is asking at this time, which I'm not saying that's going to be comfortable. That's not going to be that way, but yet we have to face these things. And I think they're becoming urgent. Mm-hmm. Right? Well, also or everything all at once. Maybe that's what we're dealing with as well. It's like, everything's just been really amped. Right.
Well, it's that the collective trauma that's been kind of swept under the rug. I mean, that we had so many people, including women, vote for someone who is clearly not having anyone's best interests at heart, shows a collective shutdown, a cognitive dissonance at best.
Well, just the overall aggression in which this administration is approaching things with. There was no okay, I'm going to be present for everybody. It was, you're not a part of this. Like, this is for me and the people who support me, and that's it. There was no reassurance. There was no, collective bringing into the unconscious of a new era. It's very us and them. It's very, very, very Mars with that Aries, feeling.
And when the vast majority of people, when the vast majority of people who make under $330,000, which were most of the people who voted for him, I will have to say, realize that he has none of their best interests at heart, it's going to be a very interesting wake-up call, especially because by that time, how much of our government is not going to look like it used to. And to be honest, if this is what can happen to our government, the other thing is, when I think about it, that false belief all of us in this room were raised on, we have 3 branches of government to keep each of them in balance and in harmony with one another.
Check and balance, yeah.
Oh, no, they don't. Not when you get someone in there that has no honor. Not when you have a fire-oriented president, right? You have someone who is purely Regulus and Mars and Leonine-oriented, has no idea about anyone else.
Yeah, we are at a moment where we're still under the throes, I just want to remind, of Pluto at the very, 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 very last part, because on the 19th it goes into Aquarius. It is hard to understand exactly what the eclipse looks like until you're in the total eclipse, and then you see it spark out. That's the only thing I can think of. Or else maybe when you finally get out into outer space and you're actually floating, it's just the imperceptible shift. So because it is very much like a roller coaster, depending, and I'm certain that if people were on the other side, on the side of, rah, shish kebab, as I often say, instead of, like you're at the football team or something, that they're wondering now, how are we going to deal with blah, blah, blah. So people are posing this anticipated conjunction of what they see. But I think what's important, and this is where I'll stop, is remembering that the outers haven't shifted. Neptune, it'll be the first, and it's still at its last waves. Poseidon is earthquakes. Poseidon's not just this calm little water business of we think. It's thunder. It's and it's horses. It's big. and in mythology, and it breaks down, and it's the unknown. So I think that could be the test of all of us, is to really jump willingly into a whole threshold of unknown, where we connect, hold hands as we can, and tread and feed, and like the spoons, the long spoons, and you can't feed yourself, but you can feed other people, and wade and tread and gallop through this and discover. Was that too? Shall we take a break?
Sure.
Okay, because that's a theory of hope, because otherwise it's like, well, I won't say what, yeah.
Well,
Onward.
I think what Rob was bringing up is really important to give us context about the Chiron return, is all the outer planets changing, especially Neptune, because that represents the collective. And that shows you, from a Jyotish or Vedic astrology perspective, those last degrees of Pisces are the most spiritual, highest point that you can reach. And then we start over at the bottom with Aries, the very beginning of something starting that doesn't even know who it is. So I think we are definitely at an inflection point, especially with Neptune changing signs here. I think that's, to me, is biggest thing right there.
So we'll grab our light beams and swing to the ring. Okay, brass ring. I'm not ready to quite put myself in we're living still. Okay, we will return, folks. We have looking at November 8th ahead. So stay tuned. See ya. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the yin period of Scorpio, traditionally ruled by Mars, now ruled by Pluto. By departing a cycle based on comparison between extreme energies finding balance, Scorpio commits a relationship to exchange resources, experiencing power and powerlessness for the purpose of soul growth transformation. As a fixed water sign that is extreme, intense, and secretively deep, Scorpio's passionate nature questions the psychology and mystery concerning life and death.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning, beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to newprosupplements.com, we cover the world of animals. This week, November 24th, it's an encore presentation. Join us to hear our last healing show with Dr. Nils and Linda Rasmussen. Together, they helped callers and their animal friends with emotional, behavioral, and physical issues, and you can receive a surrogate healing just by listening along and following Linda's instructions. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Talk Cosmos brings insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for the soul growth with hour-long programs every Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific on KKNW. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. And to find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com. So grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
Tell your friends about Alternative Talk 1150.
Well, hello, here we are. This really deep, focused subject that we have. I've heard of Great Depression, so I just want to mention that if I come across a little bit more like seeing, like you mentioned, the higher side of Pisces or whatever, it's because just to kind of give some method of going forward. But the truth is, Neptune wants truth. And so by each person taking those actions, whatever they are and need to be, is how we're all going to move forward. So I salute. Just to
back you up on that real quick.
Yeah.
one thing that I'm seeing that is actually going to be a great positive, I think, in this country through all of this change and through all these these planet shifts is you're going to see the Democratic Party shift to a more populist, situation that is actually going to help the people a little bit more, I think. And we're talking about depression, negativity. We're talking about Chiron. I mean, it's healing, it's wounds.
Yeah, call to action.
But when I do think at the end of the day that this is ultimately going to end up serving the people when we come out the other side of it. So
somehow. Through thick and thin. Yes, we do. That's so true. Yes. We're going to briefly just go through each one of our amazing abilities. Michael Bartlett is on social media accounts. You can see it right here. For those that are listening later, you can linger and go into his Core Michael, which is his site. And he has written a book, Astrological Mavericks, and also one on Astro Theater, which is fascinating. I mean, so he's a he and Justin are in their own YouTube channel, which is storming ahead, and it's the Relationship Guys, and it's a podcast, but it's a YouTube. It's fascinating, and they ask these questions, and you see the yin and yang between the people. So check it out. Justin himself has an Instagram account, Astrological Yogi, pardon me, with his forecasts. And along with on his YouTube, you can find that Relationship Guys. Justin is also having December 8th on OPA, that's Organization for Professional Astrology, a wonderful event. If you're a member, it's very reasonable, as these groups are for a year. Otherwise, put out $15 and you'll have it. He's talking about Sabian symbols. Increasingly, this is a direction that people are focusing on all the time. John Chinworth has Skypath, and he has his services, as all of us, as a consultant. And Rob Passetti, and we'll hear individually if anybody has something that they didn't share with me, Deep Earth, and he does have a tarot set that next year he's going to put out. It's fascinating. The pictures and colors, you've got to get it, in my opinion. And myself, I am on a Dwarf Planet series with Liz Mouchette, who's on one of my archetypal symbols teams. And it's a playlist, so check that out. And to let people know, and Justin's also on her YouTube program. But this is the show about the US Chiron first returning healing alchemy on the 21st on my YouTube channel. And then you can check out the latest ones here that go on. So thank you, everybody, for signing up. Did somebody have another event they want to bring up? I guess I ran right through that. Very good. Well,
I think we should ask Rob, what's the title of his tarot deck?
It is the Deep Earth Astrology Tarot deck. And right now we have just finished the Earth decans, and we have one more. We're working through the air signs right now. So as soon as we're done with that, we're going right to the printer, and I'm in the editing process right now. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm excited. Finally getting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
It's so exciting too, as Pluto moves into Aquarius. That's when I started doing the YouTube in late 2020. And I know Dwarf Planet University did it too then. And here you are with your deck. I think, yeah. Thank you for asking. Justin, would you like to talk about the Sabian symbols? And I think John too always has comments, and perhaps the rest of you.
Yeah, no, one of the things I like about the Sabian symbols, because it gives us deeper insight into the degrees those planets are trying to tell us, what that concept of that theme is. And then earlier when Michael was talking about how Chiron sacrificed, he basically, there was some sense of sacrifice there. And I think when we look at the Sabian symbols for the Chiron's 20 degrees, so I always like to go back because we, with the Sabian symbols, you go forward one. But I think it's important to look at the 20 degree here, because the concept is overcoming crisis through compassion. The transmutation of life into love is kind of what the energy is coming into this Chiron. And then, of course, that we are all talking about, that's Aries energy, the 21 Aries, the pugilist, the release of glorification and social aggressiveness, which is really what we're seeing. And Robert was just talking about how aggressive and masculine this Chiron period is. And I think that's, we're kind of having to deal with the release and the glorification of the social aggressiveness. And I think that's what it's kind of giving us some insight as to how this energy is going to express itself in the collective.
John?
Well, I just pictured like an emboldened person who wins an election and they start becoming more belligerent or whatever. And then I just pictured Greta, I can't think of her last name, the girl from Norway or Sweden who talks about climate change.
Oh, yeah.
She's the young girl feeding birds of winter, and these two Sabian symbols are next to each other. I find that very striking. So every time a fighter comes up, we have to be compassionate and say, hey, what are you doing? Why are you like that? I don't know.
A young girl fist fighting.
Combine them together, right?
There are TV shows about that. Michael, do you have thoughts about Sabians? No, we can.
Yeah, just I think it's such an interesting. I think that 21 degrees is I think it's also sort of a kind of a special point. I don't do that much with points, to be honest, in the specific degrees, but I know there's certain ones that are kind of like a little bit special. And 21 degrees just seems like this kind of an extra special one. But yeah, I mean, the other thing that comes to my mind is that image of the young girl in front of the bull there on Wall Street. They updated it. Just having the bull, and then they added the girl to it being defiant. So there's this idea of standing up for oneself. And to be honest, I think two things when it comes to what happened with the election in regards to this as well is, one, I have to say I'm really thankful. I mean, I mourned greatly. I cried like someone died in my family, actually, or someone who was close to me died on Wednesday morning when I woke up and found out the results. But I have to say I have great relief that we're not in the middle of an insurrection and all out craziness. So, I mean, I think, and then also there's one thing that Trump has been doing all along, which is to be showing the inherent flaws of what is going wrong with the system. So, I mean, and in that sense, there is a big cleanup that needs to happen. And so I think in this sense, it's, getting, rolling up one's cuffs. And why not have the fools in charge? Why not have these people, in a sense that he's hiring a bunch of out of bounds people to kind of run the country. And in that sense, one thing that I keep seeing over and over again is there's this almost an aggrandizement of the individual.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, that's narcissism.
It is, but also for all the people who don't have a healthy dose, because narcissism is along a continuum, of course. And for all those people who could actually use a little bit of narcissistic benefit to be able to say to people, no, I'm not signing up for this.
Yeah, perhaps
stuff.
There is a way to bend the tide. It's so true. It's like anything. People react in exuberance, may not be a happy exuberance, but in order to feel empowered. And then once they realize they're familiar, there's pathways to go. And it is out of bounds. Mercury, Venus, and Ceres. And of course, natally, we have Mars and Pluto. So it's something to remember. Let's look at this chart. Because when you were talking about aggression, Mars is everywhere here. And Mars will be, and we have a chart to look at a little bit, but it's not so important. Well, it is evident. It gives information that we're in this 7-month retrograde time with Mars going from Cancer, which is looking at life more safely. How do I protect and guard things, to Leo that's, hey, I got it down. I figured this out. It's me. Yay. So,
and to have a Mars ruled individual ruling the country during this time is always really fascinating.
On the ascendant. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
With Regulus.
Well, you know, I've been telling people all year that we were going to have a Mars retrograde at the end of the year, which means a part of the collective, when you have Mars retrograde, it's like you're questioning, where do I go next? And it's causing people to regroup and change their direction, Mars. And, you know, something I also wanted to point out, I think I was talking about this a little bit before the show, is I think we really need to pay attention to what the moon is telling us here. And if somebody's interested in astrology, watching what Pluto's going to do here, because that moon is right on Capricorn and it's moving the 5 degrees to the south node. And in about over the next 3 years, that Pluto will get to that south node. So this Chiron is just showing us what is to come. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a very important part of the chart to watch over the next 4 years, is this Pluto as it moves to the south node. Because anytime Pluto hits the south node, it's like a total just a volcano in change. So, you know, I might point that out.
Totally appropriate realization that, and again, we don't know, like here in Hawaii, just because we have 5 volcanoes, 4 are active, that there was one that had been dormant, or seemed like it was Mauna Loa. It was last year, and I
hear Mauna Loa in the background.
Yeah, I know.
Does someone need to hit mute on their? Someone might need to hit mute on the microphone. Oh, it's at your house. Okay, Sue. Sorry. It is. Pele has made herself known.
Anyway, life goes on, right? So what it was going to do is going to go across the road, and nobody could have got across from it. And it would have been, but it stopped. It stopped just in front of it. And of course, meanwhile, the big news was, hey, we're getting more. And with Kilauea, which is another volcano, we're getting more land. Of course, nobody lives on that land yet. But yeah, so yeah, and sorry, right at home here, my own activity.
Life with the volcanoes.
You know, talking about degrees, I forgot to mention this, that at the end of on the November 8th, as soon as Chiron moved out of that 20.8, the moon was at 5.31 degrees Aquarius. In a couple of years, Pluto's going to get to the 5.31 degree and go retrograde. It's actually the same degree the moon is at that Pluto will go retrograde at one point, and then it goes back forward. So I'd be curious what you guys think about that, as far as that Pluto hitting that south node.
Yeah. If you look at this chart just right out the gate, I mean, if we look at it from a mundane standpoint, the moon usually represents the people, women, children, with the south node there as a representation of the past. And, we have Mars, conjunct the north node in the 8th house, which is dirty money. It's almost like, we're looking at a corrupted sense of money selling out the people, with this opposition.
Well, it's also Pluto moon is emotional manipulation, right?
Yeah.
it can't help.
Well, that's going from that feminine to the masculine shift that you were talking about, Robert.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, I mean, Mars Leo is, in the 8th house is very much corrupted leadership. There's no escaping it. And the simple truth is that when you have a Jupiter and a Mars layering, as we see in the 7th house, I mean, that usually leads to success. In a lot of things, you put that expansive nature towards your action. With what's going on there with that opposition, I mean, yeah. I mean, it tracks. I mean, the richest man in the world took over the government. I mean, there's not much more to it.
And
Perfect
here,
hot
this
air
is
balloon, right? Jupiter, Mars. Sorry, from Leo to Gemini. I mean, how do we want to launch the meanness, right? Now, what kind of a me country are we going to become, and also how this is going to. Here we're always, I mean, not always, but we've been focusing on the United States. But I mean, this is going to completely shift the look of Europe. I mean, we could basically say goodbye to Ukraine. We could basically say goodbye to Poland. I don't know what else, but I mean, it's going to be pretty significant how this changes the world map.
I might also say, if I could really quickly, because I was reading some good commentary on this, we should really pay attention to what happens to China and Taiwan now, because there is a difference. And look, it's making me want to go look at China's chart and Taiwan's chart, because Trump has said that they should pay for their own defense, versus Biden, who said we were going to take care of them. So I think that might be a great show going forward, is looking at the chart for Taiwan and China and how that plays out.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Taiwan provides all of our chips. Okay, and they are also, the administration is also currently on a bender to ruin the CHIPS Act. So it would be very interesting for this country to go into its final iteration of Pluto and Aquarius without all of the technology that we need.
Yeah, just so people know, I've been switching from 3 different charts that are related. This one here is when Mars actually goes retrograde, and it's just minutes away from our North Node. And it could be exact, because who knows if that time is exact or not. So essentially, it's on our North Node. And as we can see, the Venus has moved into that 29 degrees, with now with Ceres. So just to explain what we're doing, and Mercury is there on the ascendant, but I can flip between the 3 charts.
Can I speak to something on this chart that I find really fascinating? You have Pluto, which is, of course, this really strong masculinity, but it's among these 3 feminine planets, Venus, Ceres, and the moon, that are going over the south node. I immediately thought of ancient feminine, and to think of that at this time and the power of that. So I want to give voice to that.
And that's within all of us. That's what I really love, as we think of, like, even with the bull with the little girl. It's not just physically a little girl in that part of us. It is that feminine yin part of receptivity that has been downplayed because of the brute need of strength. If you look at Iliad or any of these books, I just read it, that force did help protect, but it's been overrated. It's been, football seasons are like, anyway.
And it brings up the sea goat quality of Capricorn too, right? It brings up that feminine aspect that actually has. I like thinking of Capricorn in 3 levels. I like thinking of it as the water level with the intuition and the connectedness with all that is from the primordial forest. And I love just the land goat that will just devour and eat anything, and it can everything will go through it. And then the sublime mountain goat that only needs, like a postage stamp to land on in the middle of nowhere to reach its heights and have the view it requires.
That's a beautiful 3-step analogy, eating anything and then a postage stamp. That is absolutely true. We have goats here in Hawaii.
The traditional image of Capricorn is, the front half is a goat, the back half is a fish. So it can be anywhere and be successful on land or in the water.
Yeah, I think we also can't ignore that Mercury on the ascendant. With the retrograde period there, the sun is there as well. I mean, anytime I see the ascendant and the sun together, I'm thinking about authenticity. Yep. And and with that being in Sagittarius, I think it's going to be a very philosophical time. We're going to be really getting into the nitty-gritty of, what do we actually believe in as a country? Like, what is actually our philosophy?
Especially
Jupiter's right across the way too. So I mean, it's going to be mutual reception, but it's also the 2 bavardeurs, the 2 gossipiest signs.
Well, they got to talk it out. I mean,
exactly. But what is the story? And also the multiplicity that is involved with both Gemini and Sagittarius. It's like it's playing telephone. When you were in school, you start. The teacher told you a story, and then by the time it got to the end, and you're always like, who was the jerk along the way that made? I mean, the Virgos in the room were like, who made that up into that? That was not what was told.
Oh, gosh, well, it's time to go, I guess. Here, I'm going to flash back on one here. For anybody looking later, there's a slide. And, of course, hey, we've had this before, but when we work together, that's when the real healing takes place. David Hume, Scottish philosopher, and healing yourself is connected with healing others. Yoko. She did have some sense. Here's our great team and a few of the There we be. Well, I know. It's like, golly Moses, we'll join in January and, oh, gosh.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Blessings. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Holidays and everything. Bye, everybody.
I love it. It's like a spaceship going up. We're moving.
Sagittarius.
Thank you for joining an insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests awaken consciousness by connecting soul growth patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next Sunday, 1 p.m. Pacific Time, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.